Hi, and welcome to TMI Simulation Solutions Maritime webinar series, in which we will discuss with experts in the maritime industry how training solutions has evolved. My name is Thivash Moodley, and I'm the founder of TMI Simulation Solutions, a company specializing in interactive, immersive training systems since 2004. Based in South Africa, we have services and products for the aerospace, maritime, defense, logistics, and edutainment sectors. I shall be your host for our fourth webinar in the series titled Innovative Cloud-Based Training Solutions for the Next Generation Seafarers. In this fourth webinar, TMI has the honor of collaborating with Wärtsilä Voyage, formerly known to most of us in the simulation and training industry as Transas. And Transas has had the reputation of being industry leaders when it comes to offshore maritime training products and services. Today, with 15 years of experience, TMI with 15 years of experience in simulation and training, we have designed and developed and supported over 100 training solutions. TMI has been known over the years for our inshore, quayside, and terminal equipment simulators for training port workers. Today, Wärtsilä and TMI will demonstrate to you how you can own your own maritime academy in the cloud, helping your organization reach the smart port revolution and deep digital transformation. Without further ado, I'm very honored to introduce our guest speakers from Wärtsilä Voyage. Our first speaker, Mr. Neil Bennet, a master mariner by profession, and has climbed the corporate ladder to become the sales director of Wärtsilä Voyage Limited. Neil has been in the maritime industry for over 30 years. You wouldn't say so, but just by looking at Neil, but both at sea and ashore, sailing on a variety of vessels, whilst holding an unlimited master's certificate. After lowering his sails, Neil settled into marine operations when he joined Transas in 1999, and since served in various roles in the company, in commercial sales, business development. Neil is currently leading business development in the simulation and training division. He is considered an expert subject matter, considered a subject matter expert in marine simulations and smart marine solutions, and is a member of the Nautical Institute and a contributor to many maritime companies and the industry in general with creativity for maritime training solutions. Welcome, Neil, and thank you for accompanying us today. Our second speaker, Mr. Bupesh Gandhi, has trained as a master mariner and later became a marine simulation expert as well. Bupesh currently works as the sales manager at Wärtsilä. He has a master mariner qualifications and an MBA from the University of Southern New Hampshire. Bupesh has an impressive credentials in maritime technology, and his career was developed in organizations like Navico Maris, Transas, and Teledata, where he grew their businesses tremendously as a result of his expertise as a master mariner. Prior to moving to Singapore in 2003, he worked at ArcelorMittal, IMS Shipping, and Seabuzz.com, a .com venture which has been known in the Indian e-commerce marketplace and well known amongst the Indian shipping industry. Before joining Wärtsilä, Bupesh had founded Group Nautical Pte Limited, a maritime technology startup focused on bringing emerging technologies to the maritime industry, such as paperless document management. And his primary focus was on blockchain, AI, machine learning, 3D visualization, and our well-known AR and VR technologies of today. Welcome, Bupesh, and thank you for accompanying us today. As we just heard, Wärtsilä Voyage definitely has a proven track record in the international maritime training and simulation environment. On behalf of TMI Simulation Solutions, I would like to, at the onset, express our gratitude to both Bupesh and Neil for excellent preparation for this webinar and great presentations that you are about to see. I will then summarize by sharing TMI's cloud-based inshore, quayside, and terminal training solutions to develop your port workers on the IMO processes and procedures to operate a maritime port safely, effectively, and efficiently. Just before we start with our presentations, I would like to just do some housekeeping. I would like to request our audience to share their questions and comments on the chat. Please share your contact details through our chat for us to share with you more information about this particular webinar, the video recording, as well as presentations, and also about upcoming webinars on maritime innovation. We will display our contact details at the end of the webinar for you to start a conversation. So before I hand over to my colleagues, I think it would be prudent as a South African company and based on the African continent for me to set the scene why we chose to host this particular topic as a webinar in our webinar series. And this topic, the title of the topic is exceptionally well coined for what we're about to see. Since 2015, TMI has been investigating offshore marine training. We initially met Wärtsilä in 2016, and I personally was in awe of their value proposition when it came to immersive training simulators. And recently, we worked together with Wärtsilä on a solution for a local maritime training academy. And this is when I learned that Wärtsilä actually raised the bar even higher with their innovative cloud-based maritime training solutions for the next generation seafarers, allowing easy access to training anywhere, anytime, and on demand without huge capital investments that we also familiar know when it comes to immersive training simulators. The reality, audience, is that companies like Wärtsilä Voyage and TMI Solutions have been developing cloud-based training for many years, but unfortunately, the traditional mindset prevented us from moving these technologies and solutions forward. And now in the light of COVID, we're seeing a major paradigm shift from our traditional classroom-based training, immersive simulated training, to more cloud-based VR and AR training. And this is going to be what we consider the new norm when it comes to training. As I mentioned, being on the African continent, we have several challenges in developing countries, and the challenges are quite real as we experience them on a daily basis. We lack skilled instructors. We have lack of training equipment. We have aging and or obsolete infrastructure to undertake training, reduced training budgets. And today, most ports and organizations have to send their employees to Europe and America to attend training academies to overcome these challenges. And as you know, the logistics and training costs are becoming unaffordable. And hence, I think Wärtsilä and TMI have a very interesting value proposition with cloud-based solutions for maritime training. Now let me hand over to Mr. Neil Bennet to introduce Wärtsilä Voyage, and then we will go to Bupesh to introduce the products and solutions for developing nations and ports.
Thank you very much, Thivash. You set the scene perfectly there, I think. Great honor and pleasure to be here this morning and coming to you from Florida. It's still dark here, but sometime during the webinar this morning, the sun will most likely come up and start the day. So yeah, let me talk a little bit about Wärtsilä in general to set the scene. So yeah, we're a large company, I would say. It's interesting. My career talked about there. I've gone from when Transys was 4 or 5 people in the USA, all the way to a company now with nearly 20,000 employees. But it's been a great journey, and there's wonderful things that can be done in a company with the history and the scale and the investment and commitment of a Wärtsilä. So we're all about sustainable solutions for marine and energy, and we've been focusing on this for many years now. And we're a company that now is 187 years in the business. So as I mentioned, we focus in 2 areas, energy and marine. Our energy business is leading a transition towards renewable energies, 100% renewable energies, and our marine side is leading an industry transformation that's taking place right now towards digitalisation and a smart marine ecosystem. So Wärtsilä Voyage, we're a group within the company that focuses on radically transforming how vessels are going to perform their voyages in the future. Part of this is about connecting those vessels and leveraging the latest technologies that are available, which really gives us an opportunity to make a step change in safety, efficiency, reliability, and emissions. We develop unique solutions and underlying all that, an integrated infrastructure because we have such a wide portfolio of products. So we can combine bridge systems, cloud data management, data services, decision support tools for the officers on the bridge or in the engine room, and importantly, access to real-time information. All this really needs collaboration, and that's a big part of what we do, is working with our customers to drive forward this digital ecosystem for a smarter voyages in the future. Let's think about the simulation specifically, and our simulation starts with that smart marine vision that we have. Here we're applying those smart technologies to learning, and what we're really trying to do with the simulators at the end of the day is to provide high quality mariners and improve their performance. So what do? We're really aiming to deliver efficient mariners to the maritime industry who are equipped to perform in this rapidly changing maritime industry that we see today. And smart simulation is our next generation of our simulation platforms. We've had simulators in the market for about 25 years. We've delivered over 5,000 around the world, and we've made quite some changes recently to them. You know, if we've got mariners on the webinar this morning, you'll probably remember your experiences with simulators in training centers. Well, what we have to do now is we need to produce a different kind of platform. Rather than just being physically installed into a training center, we're actually looking for the ability to have simulation and training through a variety of different mediums, whether they are physically installed, embedded trainers on board vessels, virtual and augmented reality, cloud-based, and so on. But the important thing is you want to share the common simulation software underneath, because that's where the scale comes. That's where the real value comes in as well, right? So you can use the same hydrodynamic models, visual areas, and so on across all the different platforms and all the different mediums of delivery of the training. And that makes it fully scalable. So we can provide solutions for individual users, as you'll see, self-directed training. We can do it remotely or in person, virtual or physical classrooms, and of course those larger immersive simulators that you'll find for mariners or aviation professionals, where you can actually, you know, get into the simulator put your hands on the controls and do things, you know, like team training and management level type things. And with all that, you get great flexibility. The future of training is definitely a blended approach, which doesn't give up on the proven traditional methods of training, but it blends it with the latest technologies where each different method of training fits. And it requires different skills, but it's the most effective way to do it for the future. So it's always important to just mention about the simulators, a couple of things. Modeling. We have committed 25 years of investment into the modeling behind the simulator. Without good modeling, it's just not realistic enough, right? So you need that physical, hydrodynamic, and visual realism to make it effective training for the trainees. And connectivity is so important now. We need to gather data about students who are taking these simulations because it's really the next best thing to the live on board training. So we need to connect our users different types of simulators. We need to connect between different manufacturers of simulators. And then we want to be able to provide support through that connection as well, but then gathering that data to allow a analysis of information, collaborating and sharing. So that's a quick introduction to our simulators and what we do at Wärtsilä. What I'd like to do now is hand over the watch to my colleague Bupesh, who will talk a little bit more about the background and some of these changes that are taking place in the maritime industry right now. Bupesh?
Thank you, Neil. And once again, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm very, very honored to be here on this panel. And thank you, Thivash, for a very wonderful introduction, and Neil for providing the background of who we are. And let me now just quickly begin to come to the topic that is the theme of the webinar today. So with the background that you heard from Neil and the vision from Thivash about how the people need to be trained for future, especially like from African continent and all around the world, actually, we need to bring the seafarers to a higher competency level to make the sea more safer, efficient, and environmental friendly. So let's start with what's happening in the world actually right now. The world is changing and it's changing fast. Technology increasingly is playing a greater role every day. Somebody said a baby of today will only see personal cars in museums. Well, I think it's quite possible the way it's going. Future is approaching and it's coming faster than most of us can handle. And maritime is no different. It has stayed away from technology for quite some time, but now it's time that things are hitting the maritime industry very fast, be it navigation, cargo operations, or other technologies on board, ballast water systems, environmental compliance regulations. They are all mandating a new technology to be on board. So that has created one more change in the whole ecosystem is that there has been a shift in the source of competence. A source of competence traditionally has been on a competence from a person-based perspective. So when we talk about, for example, navigation, a person, we consider him a competent guy when he understands about the chart work, how to plot a position, how to get a fix from a satellite, a celestial fix using a sextant. That's how it was, or a terrestrial taking a bearings and plotting a position. These were the typical skills which were defining a person's competence. But the technology has shifted that focus from it's not how smart or fast you are, it's the gadget or the piece of equipment that you operate that decides the efficiency. So if you are in a scenario like this, what you need to know is how to operate this equipment, how to make best use of the information coming from them. So that has shifted the focus from a person trained in a conventional manner on the basic knowledge, which is of course is the underlying the foundation, but the person needs to be well equipped with the competence of dealing with the today's technology that's on board. So we need to essentially bring our seafarers. There is a big gap. I think most of you will agree in the way ships are operated today with high technology equipment in most of the modern ships compared to what the people are trained still in a very conventional way in many of the places and many countries. So that creates a big challenge for bringing these people quickly up to the current level to make them competitive in the world global industry of shipping, where they can be considered as an employable seafarer. And that is where the whole challenge comes. So if you see the training of today, until this pandemic came, I think most of the training centers had such something like this, where you trained people in the classrooms, you had a certain curriculum, you had certain number of days and defined by either the company, the industry or administration. And the people were trained, delivered a classroom training and they passed an exam or whatever and they were certified. So that is what we call from certification to competence, there is a gap. But what happened that now when they go on board, they need to understand more technologically advanced scenarios where they need to know how to operate something that they have not really learned in the classroom. And that is where we need to build on their basic knowledge of, for example, stability, navigation, or engine room is basic skill, but how to work with the modern technology, the modern gadgets is something very, very critical need of the industry. And we need to use the modern learning technologies that Neil talked about is where we have been focusing for some time now. But what happened? There has been, of course, the bad effects of this pandemic. But one thing good which happened during this pandemic is that this kick started a big change. It's a period of change in maritime training. There were negative sides, of course. There was the negative impact on the impact on operations of training providers, where they were geared for on-premise training, which wasn't what was needed during this pandemic. It was totally disrupted. Most of the training institutes I know in South Africa as well as in many other countries are totally closed. Not a single student is able to go there, and that creates a big shortage of seafarers and their competence levels. So they become very, very ill trained or not abreast with the current requirement. And this also ignited the transition to digital learning, which became a necessity and not an option. And also it worked toward modernizing the maritime training to deliver what is expected by that today's current seafarer, so-called digital natives. And it also created a lot of benefit for the shipping companies when the lot of cost savings, of course, but things like decarbonization and many other things, they were required to be imparted that knowledge, and that became possible through this digital solution that came around. And for maritime training providers also, they could extend their learning from the centers to the digital solutions and still meet the objective of what they're required to do. And one major thing also which is happening now is a long overdue change to the maritime training standard in STCW, where blended learning and other things were all in a way not catching much of traction. But today it is very much the need of the hour, and it has been looked at by the different administration, and many of them already have accepted this and given their approval on this form of training to be given to the people. So just to give you a perspective, there have been more changes in the past 12 months than in the last 250 years. That's absolutely revealing. from the first to the current fourth industrial revolution, for the vast majority of the time, there was hardly anything done in the education and training. You will not believe this, but it was 200 years after the steam engine that technology first entered the classroom. E-learning, it only appeared in the corporate and industrial solution in 1998, as late as 1998. Come COVID-19, all that has been put on such a fast track. There has been explosion in the current training technologies, and the same has also come to the maritime training as well. There is no option but to go there. And it has also affected us in a very big way, because we also had to provide for, we did have these solutions, but the demand for these became overwhelming. But before we go there, let me just talk about this the maritime training, that how it moved was not because of we wanted to go there, but there was no option. What you saw before pandemic, people in the classrooms, it suddenly changed to everyone on the platform. Like today we are on Team or Zoom or whatever, and it created a different absolutely environment altogether. And again, as I said, not by our own will, but as we are forced into it. So that is where it whole thing got pushed to this digital platform. So before we go there, I just want to talk a bit about simulator that Neil mentioned, all the different stages, how it's gone through to a smart simulation today. But the basic underlying principle of simulators is that it creates an immersive environment. So if you hear something, you may forget. Seeing something, you may remember some part of it. But when you do something yourself, there is a very high retention, and you also understand the nuisance of how to work through that. So I'm not that wise to make this statement. It is from a very well known philosopher Confucius who said these words, and I think they're very much relevant to simulators today. And it was the most efficient means of training in maritime. We had lots and lots of simulator centers around the world which were training seafarers. Not only maritime, everywhere. I think Thivash, you being from aviation industry, would know about zero flying hour simulators, which came quite some years ago, where a pilot could be trained to fly a commercial aircraft without having been on board that plane even once. So that is the power of, or the efficiency of these simulators, and they were used widely. But again, when the pandemic came, that became totally out of bound, and people were really absolutely stuck with what to do next. And the only obvious option was that go to cloud. So cloud, again, as I said, wasn't something invented or brought in uh, after the pandemic. We did have this solution in our portfolio for some time, but there wasn't much of traction or need for it by the industry, considering this more like a backup option, and we'll go there when we need to. And okay, we did see some interest here and there, but it wasn't in demand. So it was lying somewhere in the back burner. The moment this thing came, we had to deploy most of our resources on this particular application of cloud simulation, because all our training solutions were required to be brought quickly to this platform. And not only that, scale up to meet the huge demand. And then things like team tasks, bridge resource management, bridge team BTM, BRM, engine room management, they all needed to be performed in a very realistic manner, the way it's done normally on a cloud. And I'm glad to share with you that our teams really worked day and night and made this happen really quickly. And many of the companies around the globe, in US, Europe, Asia, everywhere, this has been used widely now by many companies and training centers to conduct most of the training now through this cloud simulation. So this became the default training medium right now, and it is brought into for the efficiencies of this solution which weren't realized. But then this created another opportunity to bring the blended learning which Neil talked about some time ago. Train a person through conventional medium like a classroom interactive or some video, the CBT, or rapid e-learning through company specific, some documents, whatever, and blend it with the immersive power of the simulators. And that is what we were actually contemplating for quite some time, to develop a very efficient learning management system like that. To bring it quickly in force, we thought of partnering with a very innovative company which had a similar vision like us, but with the complementing technologies. So if you anyone who's familiar with the maritime training ecosystem, there are two parallel systems, in fact. One is which is run by the companies. So they have their own curriculum, principally company-based training. There are some like CBT-based training, policies and procedure, and their safety management system-based exercises. So this is how they run these training for their people or their seafarers that are working in their company. And on the other hand, you have these MATIS, the training centers, which are running principally the STCW courses, and sometimes also specific courses required by the companies as contracted to them. And they use a lot of on-premise simulators to make this efficient, because they have a large number of people coming there, and this is the most efficient and acceptable way. So they do this, but these two do they do have some level of overlap, but really not. There is a big disconnect between the two, the way they are run, their own method of evaluation, the way they maintain the training record. So we found that Ocean Learning, which was very strong in the segment of the shipping company based training, where they were providing those training through principally like Videotel, Seagull. These are the companies which have been brought together under this umbrella of Ocean Technologies Group. And on the other hand, most of the training in the training center, simulator base, was 45% of global share, to be precise, was held by Wärtsilä, where we had a large presence globally on all the training centers. So if we bring these two systems together, it makes a great sense. And who benefit most is the end user seafarer, because then he has the possibility to be trained anytime, anywhere, in his own space and time. And that also cuts down a huge cost of traveling. I don't know, I know myself that certain training that I had during my sea time, we had to travel half the way across the globe to get trained on a certain kind of application, because it was available only in a training center which was far away from where you are. But that brings it to now absolute, not a necessary thing. You can be trained anywhere, anytime, on whatever learning objective it may be. And then also it brings another big element of sharing the learning record, because they are available digitally with other industry stakeholders like the administrators, or like any other the oil majors, or whosoever has an interest in these the seafarers training learning records or assessment record. They're all available through this one common system. So we brought all that together on one single platform and went ahead with this partnership with this Ocean Technology. And again, I'm glad to inform you, it is fully integrated, and all this, both the learning systems are available through one single platform called Ocean Learning Platform. And it also add one most very important and critical element of adaptive learning, where you can provide learning in the flow of work. So if you are training on a new equipment that has been installed on board, a new EGDIS or a new ballast water system, and you need to train the people on a certain module, right on his own mobile platform, that can be delivered to him again through the same this platform that is available to bring them to what we call a seamless learning pathway. As you see on your left hand, my colleague Neil, he will show you a practical run of this whole thing in a short while. So this is how it appears, and you have all the elements of learning available to you under this one single login or your portal. You see on your page all the training requirement or assessment requirement assigned to you through your manager or your trainer. You just need to click on the one that you on a schedule, click join, and then there you are right on a ship that you are going to join next, a LPG carrier, and passing through Singapore Strait with whatever weather has been created by your trainer. And it's not only you are assessed on what you're doing, but also on why you're doing what you're doing can again be assessed through assessed or trained both ways. It's possible through these pop-in questions and guidance. So this also brings us to a very, very important aspect, learner-centric content, which is the most critical, rather than having a training, the trainer, the way he wants to train, but a learner-centric content that is required for him. And this can be a very rich and engaging experience for the candidate. So if it is, for example, navigation, you can train them on whatever radar, ARPA, call regs, or whatever plotting, different areas, different type of thing, all is available to you through this. Or if it is, for example, engine room exercises, again, you have all types and brands of the engines available to you, auxiliary engines, different system like lubrication system, fuel oil, purifiers, and whatever you name it, is all available under this, again, this platform. And talking about liquid cargo, which is a more and more popular need in the industry to people. So through this, we can train people on the new IGF code for bunkering, then different ways of LNG bunkering, ballasting. So all those things that you need to train or assess a person on how to manage a liquid cargo, again, is available through this platform. So that brings us to what we envisioned right from the beginning, a connected maritime ecosystem where you have all the aspects of training on one single platform. So it's all good and well so far. We reached here partly because we should have been here, but partly because we are forced to be here because we had no other option due to the pandemic. But the question is that if God the Almighty tomorrow waved his magic wand and there was no COVID-19 left on the earth, and you woke up next morning on a bright day with no problems at all in the world, what are you going to do next? Are you going to go back to the classroom, or are you going to stay with what you have achieved in these 12 months? So I always I remember with a example from the history about the same thing, that before the sat nav came to the industry, all of us relied on one single equipment on board, which was called sextant. If there wasn't a fix taken through a sextant, nobody would trust anything other than that to be a proper ship's position. And that is what was taken as a cardinal truth. So when the sat nav came, the people thought, oh, that was just a passing phase. You took the sat nav, but you still took the sat nav, the sextant fix as a more reliable fix. But all that changed very fast when sat nav became GPS and DGPS and ECDIS and name it, and electronic navigation today. As a result, you don't even see this poor equipment called sextant anymore on the ships, and that's that's one example. So I think once the technology comes on board and it shows it's the huge efficiency that it can create and the cost saving and all the other benefits, I think it becomes what we can call a new normal. There is no going back, and you still would like to stay with what has been achieved with all the efforts with the technological intervention and where you are today. So this is where I think is where we are today. But just to give you a taste of the future, before that, I will ask my colleague Neil to take over the stage and run you through this small a video of the actual what I talked about, the learning through OLP. So Neil, over to you. I'm just going to run the video.
Yep, go ahead. All right. So let's take a look at the process for an instructor to set up a online simulation rather than something in person. So here you can see the interface of the Ocean Learning platform. Through the menu, you've got instructor-led or self-directed. And the first thing that the instructor sees is a list of all the different simulators that he has available. So in this case, these are actually some of our demo sims, but you can see there's engine room and bridge. So for each one, you have a product sheet, which gives you a little background information about what you can do with the simulator, perhaps the configuration of the specific one, and what it is then that you would use that particular configuration for. So now we can add a schedule and create a training session. So the first thing we would do, of course, is give it a name, and in this case, we'll take a ECDIS voyage planning session. We're in a bridge simulator, of course, here, and you can see here that we also have the ability to just access the simulators on demand rather than scheduling them. So if an instructor wants to go directly to the simulator, they can and start it up. We've got a nice calendar interface inside the Ocean Learning platform where you can really quickly and easily just drag to create a session on a particular date and time for your local position. And then in this case, we default the instructor, but we can add a second instructor or operator if we want to. Very easily then take out that instructor if we want to as well. You just see there by removing the selected. And then we need to enroll students. And of course, if we've connected to our learning management system, you have access to all of the different students that are in your training center or in your shipping company, and you can just select them for the list for those that you want to take part. And once you've done that, you click on the book, and that will secure the time period on that simulator in the cloud for your particular exercise, and you'll see all the other ones showing up there as well. So now let's take a student. So we're looking at it from the student perspective now. So they come into their part of the learning platform. Once they've logged in, they can see that they actually have a forthcoming event, which they can click on there to go to, but it also shows up in their tray, and this is the next activity that's coming up for them, is this voyage planning exercise. So they can click on it, and here they've got the date and time and the start time duration, and you can see that the join button is actually grayed out because it's too soon. So it doesn't start for another 30 minutes, and part of this is to avoid students getting on too soon and using up cloud time with the PC. So we try to manage it to make sure that the minimum cost is there for the training center. So by the magic of digitalization, we come back 33 minutes later, and the student is now in position to be able to go to the event that they are scheduled for, and you can see the join button is now available for them to be able to select. And once they do that, the first thing that they have to do is, obviously this is all secure, so they connect to the simulator using a remote desktop. They put their password into the system that they've been provided, all very secure, and they're connecting to the simulator now on the Amazon Web Services cloud. So they're held until the instructor decides to start the actual exercise, but they're probably in parallel on Teams. And you can see now, so we're starting up the various pieces of the simulator. We actually have a full type approved multifunction display built into the system. And just to show you around the main screens, there's a visual, there's ARPA radar, there's ECDIS, and the ECDIS is a multifunction display. And over on the left there, we have various controls and indicators. So you've got rudders, engine, autopilot, everything you need to maneuver the vessel, which adapts based on the vessel that you pick. If we go back to the visual here, you can see the visualization running, and we've got various tabs to pull up different screens for different controls. The one you see there is operating a searchlight from the vessel to take a look around. Yeah, and you can also see there's visualization controls and other things there too. So then we move on to the ECDIS. Like I say, full type approved ECDIS. We've got the route being exchanged from that too. And the same thing here on the radar, where the route is actually put across. So here we're switching on the AIS data. So you've got full AIS capability in there, ARPA radar, and this is the one built into the multifunction display. On that one, and you can see the targets are beginning to pick up there ahead of the own ship. And just quickly, you know, this is what the instructor looks like. The important thing here is that the instructor display is the same as it is in the physical simulators. So there's no new training regime that has to be done for the instructors. It's very familiar for them when they come into the system. Okay, so the next thing, I just want to show you quickly self-directed simulation. So important to be connected to the learning platform, so you've got all the student records. But here, the instructor can now look at a set of exercises that are available that he can assign to the student, and they can do on the simulator on their own without having to have an instructor present. So here we were just filtering to look at certain exercises, here the collision regulations, and now you've got a product sheet for that specific exercise, which goes through all of the details that an instructor would need to know whether this is an exercise that's going to work for one of his courses, either, let's say, as a preparation or as exam prep, or even some kind of assessment afterwards. So the instructor can, of course, try each of these exercises himself. So we have a button for them to just quickly give it a shot, check it through, and then, of course, they can make it a favorite so that they can come back to it for later, right? And so how do you get this in front of the student? Well, you set a time period that it's available to them. So a potential start date and a deadline for it to be completed. You give them a certain number of attempts, and then you enroll the necessary participants that you want to be able to do this exercise. And it's really as simple as that. Once you click on the book button at the bottom there, that will assign it to those students. You can go and have a coffee, and the student will find in their tray when they come into the learning platform that they have an exercise ready. So let's take a look at that. So here it is, the one we just assigned, the Rule 19 restricted visibility. And they just click on it. And of course, this one, they can do anytime, anywhere, as they wish within that time period that the instructor set. The student gets a set of information that sets them up ready to do this exercise. And you can, of course, associate the exercise with other learning materials, whether it be videos or CBT or anything to prepare them for the exercise or assessment that they take. We set in there a expected duration, and then we put a maximum time allowed in there as well for the instructors to use. So similar to before, you just click on the start button when you're ready to go. It will start up the simulator, and you put in your password and connect through the remote desktop file, as we discussed before, and the training system will start up. And you'll just see here in this case, what we have built into the simulator is an automated system we call eTutor that then takes the student through each of the different steps automatically. And while they do it, does all the scoring and the assessment. So that's a quick look at the Ocean Learning platform for accessing the simulators, and yeah, just a quick look at the simulators themselves in the cloud. Thanks to you, Bupesh.
Thank you very much. That was really well done. Yeah. Okay, so I will just do the last part of summarizing it all. So we do see that pandemic has brought us to this opportunity for rapid innovation, and there has been a definite paradigm shift towards remote learning solutions from the industry. We can see that industry is realizing the benefit and merits of blended learning solution. Like Neil just demonstrated, you can train a person on what he needs to do with all the other material and then put him through an exercise or immersive environment to further enhance his confidence on the task that he's going to do, like restricted visibility. So that will give him a lot of confidence when he's actually in that situation, backed with the theory, the videos and the simulator based immersive scenario. Does it make sense to go back from here? To my thinking, I would say no. I would be very glad to hear anyone who thinks otherwise. And what comes next? So before we close this, I would like to give you a taste of something which is even more immersive than what we have seen so far. And it is again not a wish list or something far away. It's available now. It is already been used in some of our training center, which is smart reality. So smart reality is slightly different from virtual reality. It still keeps all the mathematical modeling what Neil talked about of 25 years of our experience, but puts it on a extended reality on your headgear. So let's look at how does it look like.
Yeah, so just to add a few things here. So the first applications of this technology are for maneuvering simulations for ship handling. So, as Bupesh pointed out, very importantly, we have behind the simulation the hydrodynamic modeling and all the capabilities of the full simulator. So we've got a couple of ship models that we're running pilots with the cruise lines, and it's been extremely well received so far.
So sorry, I think I clicked the wrong button. Just to give you a little, there were few more scenarios here. I just want to complete that. So
yeah.
So this is how it works, and then you like Neil said, it's a manual exercise, but you have the same look and feel as you are on a bridge, and you see these panels. They are the real panels that you will see on this, and it's like the people who have used it in the technology simulator, for example, you can really operate the flaps, the valves, and it is amazing to be in that scenario and get that experience. So this is where the whole training is going to go for our so-called generation next, and not from our generation who train principally in the classrooms. So that's what is the future, and I would just complete my thing by saying that technology can create an exciting future, and that's what we need for Gen Next. Because one most important thing which I would like to add here before I finish is that we need to have the new generation, the brilliant minds from the new generation coming to this maritime industry, and they see this not as a great option because it's a low technology. Today's generation wants to be somewhere where there is exciting new technology. And by deploying this kind of initiatives like good technology and good training on the technology platform, will certainly motivate them to come to this industry, which is very much or most critical need to have such a great or exciting minds who are on our ships to make them more safer, environmental friendly, and being run by these brilliant young people. So that's all from me. Thank you very much, everyone. And Thivash, over to you now.
Thank you, Neil and Bupesh, for sharing with us and our audience how you guys have introduced cloud-based simulation solutions. And I would like to then, I thought I would have time. I'm looking at the time now. I really thought I would have time to just show you something about a little bit about what TMI did with moving our inshore quayside and terminal training solutions to the cloud as well. So, Similar to Wärtsilä, we were involved in lots of classroom-based desktop simulation systems and in on-vehicle, in-equipment training. And we had lots of active role players in these systems in the virtual world. And it was good integrating in a classroom environment because we learned from each other and we understood, what were the shortfalls amongst the colleagues. But then COVID came along and just totally changed all this. And we had to end up virtualizing a lot of our solutions. And now we've created some really modernized and state-of-the-art virtualized and emulated solutions for training in the maritime sector in the cloud. And one of them was we built what we called the cloud-based logistics supply chain simulator. And again, you could train multiple people in different parts of the world in commercial, marine, terminal services. And they would participate in these activities, even though they're not even operating in the same port. But what they're doing is they're learning the processes and procedures according to a standardized principle. And we've seen a lot of good feedback, and we've heard a lot of good feedback from some of our clients who are using this to train people because they cannot get to training centers, and training centers have actually been closed due to COVID. So I'd just like to show you one of the virtualized ports that we did was the Durban Maritime Harbor, and this entire port is in the cloud, and you can select on the different vessels and equipment handlers inshore, and Wärtsilä obviously is doing all the outshore stuff. So this becomes a very complementary and supplementary tool for an integrated maritime solution where you could train on Wärtsilä's cloud-based solutions for our offshore maritime skills. And then for your inshore maritime skills, you could work with TMI's logistic chain, supply chain simulator, and our equipment handling simulators using VR technology. And that's basically it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay. And going back to the webinar. So yeah, so guys, I think it's time to wrap up. We've perfectly on the hour, surprisingly. First time one of our webinars have made it to be precisely on the hour, but I think it's fair now that I take some of the questions that we have from the audience, and I would then pose these questions. I think I've seen 7 questions, but in the interest of time, I'm going to take 5. Just let me go to the first question. I'll read it and see if it's applicable or not. The first question, I think it's a good question for Wärtsilä, is transitioning from the real vessel to the immersive simulators was an innovative leap in marine training. Now, transiting to the cloud would have challenges with the realism of the learning environment. How do you adapt your learners to deal with this? I think this is an important question given our transition to cloud-based. I see Neil put his hand up. Neil, you're more than welcome to answer it.
It is a great question. I'll adjust it slightly to say we have to almost change the way we're teaching the tools and the learning content to fit with the learners, right? So it's a great question, because if you think about the next generation that was referenced by Bupesh, they will take to cloud in seconds, and we've seen it. They're straight onto it, no problem connecting, everything they need to do, no problem. You might find actually that the instructor is perhaps from my generation and perhaps not quite so computer literate, and it actually takes them a little bit longer. And so certainly when it comes to the simulators, we try to make it as easy and as user-friendly as possible. And we can still do a lot more than we already have. But then the content itself, I think, the instructor of tomorrow, what has to be able to engage with the student, right? The simulators and the equipment can do a lot, but what engages your kids today? It's TikTok and YouTube, right? So those are the mediums. So an instructor may have to think of themselves more of a YouTuber that can continuously keep engaging with the student to get them to achieve what they want online. Rather than, when you're in a classroom, it's quite easy to do that because you can see who's engaged and who isn't and adjust quite rapidly to work with the learners for that.
Thank you, Neil. That was a good answer to that question. Sorry, we just had a bit of finger trouble with unmuting myself. I think another good question here that I see is, have you done any benchmark studies using traditionally trained mariners, technicians, and engineers with these new cloud solutions to understand their perception of the value? You sort of answered that question, Neil, a little bit. I don't know which one of you two guys want to answer like the way it was asked.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly take it and invite Bupesh to add anything. The benchmarking, some of the leading maritime training centres are, really jumping onto this. What I will say is we don't have enough data, but there is a lot of data about professional learning and development and e-learning, which does point out that, some numbers that I recall is it's about 1/10 of the cost to run a course digitally. It reduces the carbon footprint by about 30%, and most importantly, there is no appreciable change in the quality of the training. And I would add to that only that a lot obviously comes down to the instructor and the content and how it's put together. But Solent University and the UK authorities have done quite a comprehensive study with their students over a year during the pandemic, which is a great read, very well put together and thought out, and offers up a lot of results from that and recommendations for the various groups involved, whether it be the authorities or instructors or training centres from that. And we hope to be able to support more of those types of studies in the future and help to gather the data. Bupesh, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, Neil, only just one small thing that, personalized learning or learner-centered learning is the most effective way as they are discovering today. So when you said benchmarking, a way person was trained earlier was in a group, in a classroom or wherever, and there wasn't much of a personalized focus on a person. But through these digital initiatives, you can actually tailor-made or customized learning for, let's say, 6 guys in a one group. You can customize for each 6 by identifying the gap areas in their learning records or wherever they need a specific emphasis on certain thing, and adding that element from the huge library of content combined with a immersive simulator exercise. So I think this is certainly much higher efficiency than any other way of learning that was imparted in the past. That's what I would say.
I like your answers, guys. And I also think the one big thing is, to train somebody in the entire environment takes a long time doing it in reality. But doing it in a virtual world where you can dynamically change the scene, change the areas, change the environmental conditions, the learning becomes much faster and much more progressive, and the retention also becomes very important, and people absorb it much more. I'd like to take another question now, and it's, do you think with VR and cloud training services, immersive simulators would become obsolete? This sounds pretty much like a student type of question. So I don't know who would like to answer that question. Neil, Bupesh?
I think I let Neil answer this because he has a good idea on this.
I don't think so. I think all the different types of simulators and training mediums have a part. If there is one lesson I think we all learned from the switch to 100% online learning during the pandemic, is that it's not perfect for everything, right? So the future is a blended approach. Different students have different needs. I think that's also an important lesson learned, is one student may get fantastic results and learning from being in VR. Another one might not. They might have problems with being on a VR simulator in the first place. So we're very much hardwired for delivery in a very specific environment in our regulations. And, you know, the important thing is we get to the competence. So each different group should learn in their own ways. But in the long run, your immersive full mission simulators, they have a very important part to play in that your teams are together, bridge team management, research and development, all kinds of things. You know, ship handling is great in that type of environment. So yeah, they all have a part, but virtual reality, I think when you have modeling backing it up, it changes it exponentially in that it is so much more realistic all of a sudden. So it has a place to play.
Thank you for that, Neil. That was a brilliant answer, I must admit. I see a question on engineering simulators, and being an engineer myself, I think I would like to award that question to me. Do you have an engineering simulator, and can you link both systems? I think that's a good question. You know, we always, when we started with simulation, we spoke about low fidelity and high fidelity modeling, and we always separated the two. Low fidelity ran in real time, and high fidelity ran mostly in the frequency domain and slower than real time. Today, with the speed of computing and the connectivity and bandwidth, we can run definitely engineering simulators in real time, in very small increments, and it's easy to integrate the two. And you would have heard in our previous webinars, we spoke a lot about digital twinning, and digital twinning is only about linking the real with virtual. And that's where the beauty of where we are today in terms of broadband connectivity and high-speed computers, cloud-based computing power that enables us to link high fidelity. If you go back to the traditional way of talking, it's high fidelity and low fidelity simulation models. So your digital twins is the best way to represent the benefit of integrating real and high speed with the virtual world. I think we have no more questions. We have to cut, and I think I'd like to conclude now by just sharing with you guys and also thanking our guest speakers today, Bupesh and Neil. You know, you guys have a vast amount of experience, and the good thing is when you're trained in the traditional world, and now you are seeing what the modern world has to offer to our next generation seafarers or Gen Next seafarers towards learning faster and retaining more information by learning in this format. So on behalf of TMI Simulations team that is behind the cameras and our guest speakers, we want to thank all our audience that participated today in our webinar series. And we'd like to just give you a peek introduction into next week's webinar. And it's basically a live AR and VR demo by STC Group. And we look forward to that, and we think it'll be quite good. So until next time, goodbye, stay safe, and we will be sharing on our LinkedIn page the videos, on our website the post-recorded videos for you to download and find out more about. Thank you very much, and take care, goodbye, travel safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thivash. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.